it's a it's a good day because I think I'm assuming that you will be exposed to a lot of information that you have not been exposed before, because this has to do more with business and uh, commercial properties and investment properties. I think maybe we can start off because you have to look at these videos that you're coming across a client that is looking for a commercial or investment property. You might be coming across a client that might say, I have some cash money, should I put it in RRSP or GIC or a stock market or a mutual fund or real estate? Uh, you never know. You might think right now that I don't have that kind of a target market right now, but you might sell someone's home and they have a lot of cash and equity in the house. They're buying another one and they have money in their hand and they ask you, they seek your advice, what should I do with that money? You can help them to buy real estate. And you might explain what are the benefits of real estate. So it starts from that what are the benefits of real estate and why real estate. So that's why we will start with this video and then follow from there. Let's see if this, yeah. Focus. What are the benefits of investing in real estate? The list is long. Let's focus on some important ones. The most obvious one is tax benefits. If you're investing in real estate and if you have consulted with your accountant, you might be eligible for capital gains, which means you're going to pay half of the tax. Of course, real estate appreciates. The market might go up and down, but on average, history has shown that properties minimum goes up and appreciates by 3%. The other very profound benefit is that you will pay the principal amount that you owe to the bank. For instance, if you're buying a property for $300,000 and if you're putting a down payment of 20%, which is $60,000, after 5 years, you're almost paying $30,000. So, principal payment is something kind of guaranteed. If you're buying the right property and it has a positive cash flow, you have to consider that it should be at least 10% return on the money that you're investing. So, if you're putting down $60,000, you should have $6,000 per year. When considering cash flow, you have to emphasize and pay attention to your monthly expenses. It is not simply just mortgage payments, utilities, and property taxes and insurance. You have to keep in mind property management. You have to keep in mind the bad debt. You have to keep in mind the vacancy of the properties. So after 5 years, let's see, you have a capital gain, 3% per year. That is almost at least 30,000 or more. If it is 15%, that means you have 45,000. You have paid 30,000 in your principal payments, and you have a cash flow of 10% per year, which in turn means 30,000. So you have invested 60,000 from your pocket, but you received after 5 years 100,000. That is 30% or more return on your money. We don't have any other option in our market to invest in. So real estate investment has a lot of benefits, and these are some of the major benefits with real estate investment. Okay, so these are some of the other options in real estate. I mean, for example, stocks or RRSPs or mutual funds, but none of these are in our control. GIC is something that is guaranteed. Well, 99.999% guaranteed unless the bank goes out of business. But other than that, it is guaranteed. But the return is very low. Right now, it is somewhere 1 or 1.25% if you put it in GIC. So that's why it's not even, I mean, as good as
I mean 2%, which is the inflation. Yeah, 2 to 3%, which means you're losing money.
You're losing money.
If I think this is something that you will come across, every smart investor will ask you this question: that if real estate investment is so good, why there is a problem in US, right? Because people are exposed to US real estate and they know that people made a lot of promises and things did not go as good as it was supposed to. A lot of people are in trouble and losing their money and whatnot. I think the bottom line is that if you're investing in any property, if you want to be secured no matter which way the market goes, it has to have a cash flow. That's it. And cash flow means that you have some income after paying all your expenses, some income coming from that property. Ideally, you should have 10% on your investment. So as I was explaining there, if it's a 60,000 investment or 60,000 down payment, you should have 6,000 coming to your pocket. That's ideal situation. So let's say if it's a rental property and the market tanks, first of all, you have that 10% buffer zone. Secondly, if you even break even in bad times, you don't need to sell the property at bad times. It is just covering itself and it's giving the mortgage payments, right? So a lot of people that buy properties like the ones in condos in downtown Toronto, if market tanks, right now they're giving, if they rent it, they will give out $200, $300, $400, $500 out of their pocket every month because it's not cash flowing. But they're doing that right now with the hope that they will give $200 per month, which is only a few thousand in 1 year, but they know that it will appreciate 20, 30, 40,000. So they want to take that risk. What if the market goes the other way? How long can they sustain giving $200, $300 every month? So then they will give up and then they will put it in the market. It doesn't sell, then they will foreclose. The exact same problem. So you should buy a property that has a cash flow to be secure. Of course, you guys know that these things need a lot of in-depth analysis, but I'm just giving a list that other than mortgage and property taxes, which is just for a normal house, like insurance, utilities, you have other things. Some people will not pay your rent, so you have to take that into account. There might be vacancies that people will go out and you cannot find another tenant to occupy. And of course, with the properties, there is repairs and maintenance. If you're not managing it yourself, you have to account for all this. And I've put the percentages. That's the average for an average property. If it is too old or too new, this might be different. Okay, so having said about the benefits of real estate, the same way that we discussed about type of houses in a residential property, let's just have a list of type of properties in commercial property. Of course, a question might come up whether those condos are considered commercial or not, or buying a house in Pickering is considered as a commercial or not. Yes, it could be. If you buy it with the intention of renting it, it is an investment property. And then from there on, that's probably the least or the lowest at this list, but it comes with the mixed use, which means it's a mix of different uses. Then it is multifamily, which means it's apartment building, strip plazas, retail. And then this is more common in downtown area, that there is a store at the lower level, an apartment at the upper level. There is office, and then some offices are condos. So it's a building that has been converted to condo, or it's a condominium offices that they sell each office. Then there is industrial, and then there is power centers. Like these are strip plazas or maybe small malls, shopping centers. These are different types, just a quick list. Basically, of course, there is a lot of variables. As I said, commercial real estate is very sophisticated. We cannot even start to discuss the basics of the commercial real estate elements in these 2 hours. But basically, I mean, I'm very generalizing. It boils down to these two things. when you invest in real estate. It is how much rent you collect, which is the cash flow, and what is the chances or potential of this appreciating, which is capital gain. So if you buy 2 million today, it will be worth 2.55 years down the road. That's capital gain. And people buy for the potentials in that location, which we will discuss later. But it boils down to those two things: the money that you receive, the revenue, the rent, or the potential that it will have a capital gain. Okay? Okay, so that's why when someone calls you to list their commercial property, in residential, we mostly do it by comparing to the other houses. But as I was mentioning in previous slides, it is about rent. In this commercial property, it boils down to net income. So the way you evaluate a property is mainly how much income it generates. Okay? And then you calculate the cap rate. You guys have done cap rate, right? So once you find the cap rate, of course, nobody can tell you what is the going cap rate in the market. You have to find it. It's different at different times. Depends on the economy, depends on interest rates, and so many things. So once you find the cap rate, you can easily find the value, which is dividing the net income before taxes by the cap rate. You guys have done that, right? Yes. But this is the difference between evaluating a commercial and residential property. So the risk here, the investment, the higher the expected cap rate is. So if it is, for example, a motel, which is a higher risk, the cap rate is 10, 12, and sometimes 14%, because nobody can exactly project in future that how much the income of that property will be. It depends on so many variables. So that's why the cap rate is higher, which means if the cap rate is higher, the value will be lower, right? So if you calculate the same income, if the cap rate, for example, is 10% and the net income is 100,000, that means the value is 1 million, because you will divide the net income, which is 100,000 divided by 10%, it gives you 1 million. But if the same income is divided by, let's say, 8%, then the value will be more than 1 million, right? So that's why the risk here, the higher the cap rate. The higher the cap rate, the lower the market value of the property. Same thing that I said, right? Okay, some of the terminologies that you should know, because you will come across this when you search for commercial listings. TMI is tax, maintenance, and insurance, which means how much is the tenant, commercial renter, will pay for taxes and maintenance of that property and insurance. CAM is common area maintenance, so some places will have that. HVAC is for heating and air conditioning. And tenant improvements, this will be more into your lease that will come up, that, for example, the landlord will give 2 months free for tenant improvement, but instead of saying tenant improvement, it might say TI. Okay? And then there are rent types. By the way, I'm going through these quickly. If you have any question, please stop me. I'm assuming that you guys must have discussed this, so I'm just kind of skimming through. There is a difference between basic rent and additional rent. Basic rent is, just say this place is for rent at $10 per square feet. The additional rent is generally TMI, which is the tax, maintenance, and insurance. And the gross rent, of course, is those two put together. You cannot calculate that to your client that your rent is based on $10 per square feet. The rent might be, basic rent might be $10, but you pay another $15 TMI, so it's really $25 per square feet. Rentable area is equal to usable area and then proportion share of the common area. So, for example, we are renting from this mall. It is this area plus the proportion of, they're calculating the total area and then dividing to our percentage and So we will be paying more than just this space, right? You guys know these things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you're buying a property, make sure of the zoning. So for example, if someone calls you and say, I'm a dentist and I want to buy or rent, whichever the case might be, find me a place that I want to practice being a dentist. You have to make sure that the zoning allows for that. And how you can make sure is not what the landlord or the agent tells you. You have to go to the city as an agent. If you're competent, if you want to protect the interests of your client, go to the city and find out what is the zoning for that space. Because the landlord and agent might assume something, but the reality might be something else. Okay, so zoning is very important. So these are some of the things that you should look for when you're looking for a property for your client that approached you. You should advise them based on some of the important factors that I have put for each category. So let's say if they are buying an apartment building, these are the factors that play a major role. So the proximity to amenities such as transportation and whatnot, the proximity to school district, what's going on in the rental market, and they have to be aware that they're dealing with residential tenancies, and there is a lot of rules and regulations. And again, I'm just putting that list. If you want to have more interest, you have to follow this list. I'm not going into detail, right? If it is a commercial retail property, then it's a different scenario. The schools may not be very important. It is the traffic count and flow. It means how many cars are passing by that plaza. Okay? And visibility, which is close to this. I mean, is it on a main street or is it in one of those smaller streets? Make a difference. And the view, and if there is enough parking. So this is the top four most important items when you're buying a retail commercial property. If you're buying an office, this is different. Whether it has high-tech wiring, is it accessible with highways and railways and whatnot? What is the vacancy, and what are the facilities in that building? So as you can see, for each type and category of properties, it's a different. And then for industrial, it might be totally different. Because industrials are very old, structural issues might be a issue. Ceiling height is very important for some industrial guys, because if they're stacking up things all the way, they will take full advantage of the height. That's why the height becomes important. Or they might be carrying some items that it needs a very high height of the ceiling. The loading docks, it means how many does it have, how many drive-ins. The difference between these two, you guys understand. This one, a truck will come at the door and you then download everything that's inside the truck. With this, they will go inside the warehouse, drive-ins. Accessibility is same as like highways and railways. Because these properties are used heavily, so it might have some environmental concerns, as you know, and of course transportation route. So I mean, I'm just trying to point out that every commercial property might have different elements that plays role in evaluation. So for example, if a same retail plaza is on a main street as opposed to a street inside some community, it might have a different evaluation. It plays a role, okay? Now again, these are just the basics so that you have some information. This is something that the chance of you coming across is probably higher than the other categories, which means somebody will call you and tell you, come and sell my business. And these are sometimes very small businesses. They're on brand name like ABC Pizza or something like that they want you to sell. It's a family business. You are looking for these 3 items minimum, and please make a note of this because this is part of the rules and regulations in Ontario. Profit and loss for the past 12 months. Okay, that's the statement. asset and liabilities. So this is more about the income and expense, right? The asset and liabilities is everything that that business has. So these are two different things. One is about the income, this is about balance sheet. And then the third one is list of items that are included, such as equipment or whatever else. In a convenience store, it might be different from a pizza store. These are the minimum requirements that you should get at the time of listing. So balance sheet, income sheet or profit and loss, and then the list of chattels.
Sometimes business owners, they have two books.
Yeah, that's a very tricky question. But I think the one that they take to Revenue Canada, that's something that probably you might get from them. But this is required.
That's what they declare.
Yeah. So we have something in Ontario called the Bulk Sales Act. The Provincial Act applies to the sale of business where inventory is involved to protect creditors of the seller while imposing certain responsibilities on the buyer. So based on this act, you have to have those things. Okay? Another thing that you need is business license. So if you're buying a business for your clients, for example, daycare, or if it is a restaurant with serving alcohol, the business might have a license, but will it be transferable to your client? Can your client be qualified for that license? So be very careful when you're buying a business. Make sure, well, all the businesses, for example, if you operate a convenience store, you don't need a license. But there are certain businesses that you need a license, and you have to make sure that your client is qualified, because they might buy the business assuming that you know everything as a professional person, but you did not advise them that you need a license to run this. It's like somebody buying this real estate brokerage, they need a real estate license to run this business, right?
So, like a restaurant kind of thing, to get the liquor license, is that usually a problem?
Sorry?
Like
No, it's not, but I think you just want to make sure. But for example, a daycare might be a problem.
Yes.
They need someone that has
Certified.
a couple of years experience and education and whatnot.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah. Okay, another thing that if you're buying, you have, or leasing, you have to be concerned that the business, the landlord first of all will allow for the lease to be assumed, because some leases might exist that the landlord does not allow any sublease or any assignment to anybody. You're stuck till end of your life. Or there might be some franchises. For example, if you want to run a pizza store, which is a franchise, they might need a minimum of 2 years experience or management experience or things like that. So you have to be careful when you're buying those things for your clients, because not only the municipal licenses, but also the franchises may not be transferable to someone else. For example, if you buy a Tim Hortons, they need a lot of experience and background from your client. They will not just give, the owner of Tim Hortons, the local owner, might not have a problem giving the keys to your client, but the head office might have a problem and not approve you. Okay, so if you're selling a business, in the last few slides, like 3-4 slides, we were talking about business, not property, right? Do you guys understand the difference? We were not selling property, we were selling business. If you're selling a business, it is generally, this is very vague, it depends on the type of business, but just to give you an idea, when you're listing a business, you have to do your own dig-in and due diligence, but generally it is 3 to 5 years. So let's say if the net income of a business is $10,000, it means it is worth about $30,000 to $50,000. Of course, there are businesses that are very solid, something like maybe Tim Hortons. I don't know if anybody will sell, but maybe that will be closer to 2 times. Maybe it will be, if the net income is $100,000, it's worth, sorry, when I said 5 times, that will be closer to the higher. But if it is some other type of business that's not in demand, like a video store, that a lot of them went out of business, they might be selling even 1 time or 2 times. That means the new owner should be able to recoup their original money within 1 or 2 years. This times means you will get your money in that number of years, right? So if it is 3 times, it means you will get your original money in 3 years. If it is 2 years, you will get back your money in 3 years, 2 years, and in 5, it means you will get back in 5 years. So the stronger the business is, the longer the period, and that means the higher the value. You guys are following me, or I'm confused? Okay. And the commission in real estate, commercial real estate is a little bit different. And of course, what I have written here is not written in stone, but it's the same way that we say in residential it's 5%, but some people charge 3, some people charge 6, some people charge 4, it depends. But this is just a guideline. So if you're leasing, it is 10% for the first year, and then 5 or 6 for the remaining years. Okay? Now this 10%, remember that half of it goes to the other agent. This is a listing, you're getting the listing agreement. But of course this 10% probably might be 5% if you're listing 100,000 square feet, because there is a lot of money involved. Or this 10% could be 12% if you're listing only a 500 square feet place. So it depends on the size and how quickly it can be sold and things like that. But this is just a general guideline. If you're leasing office, the cooperating agent generally receives $1 per square feet per year, and you as listing agent receives 75 cents per square feet. This is the norm of the market. It's the same way that listing commission 5% is the norm of the market. If you're selling a business, it is 10%, but if it is $1 million business, it might be less. Right? This is listing commission, which means generally you give half of it, and sometimes more than half to the other agent, the cooperating agent. So that's why if you see a lease, generally it will say commission to the cooperating agent 4 or 5% for the first year, and it might say 2 or 3% for remaining years. But it could be different. Okay. Now we have discussed about different type of commercial properties that you can list. We have discussed the benefits of real estate. We have discussed selling business. This is something that goes a little bit more deeper. What we have discussed is mainly people already have properties and they come to you and they tell you to list it. Now, from now on, it applies more to a buyer, that they come to you, and as I said at the beginning, they say we have money and we want to invest somewhere. Then they want to seek your advice and they want to consult with you. Now, I also told you that real estate basically commercial real estate boils down to 2 things. It's the income, net income, and appreciation, or capital gain, whatever you want to call it. Now, for appreciation to happen, of course, there is appreciation. Sometimes the whole market goes up, like condos in downtown in the past 5 years have been going up every year. But then there is also another way that you can predict appreciation because of the location of the property or where you buy it. And I will explain how you can predict those and what type of property you're buying. Generally, you will have about 3 to 5% appreciation if you buy it at the right place. This is not the market appreciation. This is more like you are a professional person, and because of your expertise, this happens. If the market appreciates 10%, it means it will appreciate 10 plus this 3% because of your expertise. You guys are following me? So for that, we have to discuss this, a stronger investment. And there are 3 things that play a crucial role in becoming that expert. And those 3 things will be discussed in following videos and slides. So I will play this, and let's see if you buy, for example, a property in Stouffville versus Tweed, Ontario. I don't know how many of you have been to Tweed, because I haven't.
Younger days.
Yeah, Tweed. Yeah, nobody lives there.
No, that,
But anyways, there is a difference, and this will point out what's the difference. Because you know, when we are trying to buy properties, we just look at the property. We forget that the location of the property is important, and that location, more importantly, is within a city or town or location that you buy, and this explains why that's so important.
Hello and welcome to Real Estate in Focus. We are all reading newspapers every day in and out. How about making money by reading newspapers? Is that possible? Yes, it is possible. If you look at and pay attention to announcements that are made about cities, towns, neighborhoods, job creations, employment increases, in-migration, if you're reading these and then taking action to invest in towns, that means you're investing based on economic fundamentals. You're not investing on a speculation by investing on towns that have past records. You're investing in future of towns. That means this town is booming, things are coming up. So, these information you can find not only in newspaper but on the websites such as the StatCat website. You can look for announcements in the local media, in the national, and of course in your neighborhood print media that you have. One of the important things to look and watch for is that, you know, migration and population increase is the base of demand for housing, demand for real estate, demand for rent. This is a trend that has been proven that immigrants, when they move to a neighborhood, they usually stay as renters for a couple of years. That means if you're investing in rental property, you have a good pool of people. And then after a couple of years, they usually step into buying houses and real estate. That means if you're buying today with this trend, they're coming and renting your property, and then you can sell it a couple of years later or 3 years later to people that are interested in buying. So it is very critical and crucial to follow this trend, to follow these announcements that are made. But it's also important that you compare these announcements to the provincial averages. So let's say if you're looking at the town, look, if population is increasing higher than the provincial average. If you're looking at the job increases, if you're looking at the income levels, these all numbers, the income, the total number of population increase, everything should be higher than the provincial average. That is very important. Sometimes your neighborhood might have a good announcement, but that's not good enough. It has to be higher than provincial average. So before I leave you, as to summarize all these points that I have made, it is important that investing should be based on information, not on speculation. Thank you.
Okay, so I think one of the things that was mentioned there is that when you're considering to buy these properties the town that you're buying is important. And these are some of the most important things that you should look at, and these are easily available on the Stats Canada website. The most important ones are these ones, but you have to compare this with your province average. So for example, if provincial average, the most recent stat says that it increased by 5.7, the Canadian average was 5.7%, 5.9, and Ontario was increased by 5.7%. Your town, let's say Markham, it should be higher than 5.7%. If it is lower, it means it's not a good place to invest. You guys are following me?
mm-hmm.
So everything, everywhere location that you're considering, it has to be compared with the province, because the average means it is a combination of good and bad. If you're in a lower than 5.7, it means you're not in so good location, right? There are places like, let's say, Windsor or Thunder Bay, that they're losing population. And when there is no people, there is nothing, no business, no real estate. I mean, there is real estate and there is business, but it's not doing good, right? So that's why you have to consider comparing that. And I think if you do that, it will give you a kind of, this is what I teach you, is unfortunately most agents don't do it and they're not even aware of it. So you will have a tool that will make you feel confident if you just work on what I teach you and what you learn from here, and try to bring this information to your client and show that how you're knowledgeable about these things. And it's very easy to get this information from website. This is just a guideline. So the first thing was population growth and income growth. Now the second one is transportation, which plays a major role in business and property valuation. And again, just let me remind you, appreciation in general by market is different. This is from your expertise. This is an additional bonus, right? Yeah. And of course, in case if the market goes down, you have this buffer zone because you bought it at the right place. And this, by the way, applies even if you buy your own property, your own residential property for your own family. Same rules and regulations and same principle applies. So the second one is transportation. There are some studies done by an organization that I am part of called Real Estate Investment Network Canada, and this comes up with some interesting figures about transportation. that last point is very important. When this video was recorded, there is a government agency, Metrolink, that is in the news these days, and Mayor Rob Ford had different ideas about subway, and the stats that I mentioned there, that 80% within 2 kilometers by 2020, was something that was approved by previous government. And of course that is an Ontario plan, but it also implements most of its projects in Greater Toronto area. So the local municipality has some say into that. Having said that, I think it is important to keep in mind that what I'm saying about transportation is not already places that already have transportation. Those properties are already evaluated higher. So for example, at Yonge and Eglinton, the properties are already up there. What this slide or this video is trying to emphasize is try to find announcement that things that are coming in future. So for example, we know, and it is approved, that by 2015 there will be a subway line through York University at Jane and 7, and then Steeles and Keele and Finch and Keele. So if you buy properties now there, by the time it comes up, the value of your property will be higher compared to, let's say, if you buy at 9th line and 16th. Oh, sorry, not the value of your property will be higher, but the percentage increase will be higher. Yeah. Because of the transportation. So that's why you have this information ahead of you. I mean, you're not the only one. There will be other people, but there is few people that are investors. I had some stats from banks that the mortgages that they gave, less than 4% is investors. It is most of their mortgages are mainly for people that are buying their principal home. So there is not a lot of people doing this, but again, see, look at some of the stats here. If you're buying a property, why don't you buy it between 500 to 800 meters from the subway line, which brings up the value all the way up to 10 to 20%. So let's say if it goes 20% up, appreciates, this is not with the market, this is because of this specific location. So let's say if the market goes down 20%, you have a buffer zone, you then lose. Do you see that if you can present this in this way to your client, they will be impressed by you and they will be enticed to buy that property because of this reason, right? Any questions? And also you have to keep in mind, for example, there is a subway now in Barrie that goes, and I think it is an hour and 45 minutes that you can get from Barrie to downtown Toronto. It's an express GO train. So people are not calculating their commuting by how many minutes or how many hours, how many kilometers, it's how many minutes. Yeah. How many minutes it takes me from Stouffville to come to office. Not like how many kilometers it is, right?
Well, that's what I do when I Google distances too. You look at the time it gives you, like the kilometers.
Yeah, this is the map that was approved, and again, everything that is said here, we don't know if for sure it will happen because the government changes their mind every now and then, especially when a new one comes. But this was something that they were trying to say, that most people in Ontario will have access to public transportation, which is something that is missing in Canada in general. If you go to Europe, if you have traveled to Europe, their transportation system is so efficient. I was in Paris, for example. I remember they have at least 13 lines. In one subway that I went, they had like 13 lines. In Toronto, we only have 2. Like the one that goes north and south, and then it goes east and west. TTC I'm talking about. But look at 13 lines. You could get anywhere in that city within 20 minutes. When I was a student at York University, one day I wanted to go from York University to Finch and Kennedy. I'm not exaggerating, it took me an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah, because I mean, not through car, but by subway and TTC. It takes a long time, but if you're in, let's say in Europe, they have zigzag lines. So there are straight lines and then there are zigzag lines. You could get across the city within few minutes. So this was supposed to help, and hopefully it goes through. But I mean, if you follow this, and all this information is available for you, if you just Google it, Moving Ontario 2020, you will find the map, the information. So if your investor is buying, they know where they're buying for. I mean, if you're living in Stouffville, you know prices have changed after GO Train came to the town. And same thing with Pickering. For example, in Pickering, they're planning to expand Highway 407. I mean, it's not just the railway line, but also the highways. Okay, so the first one was income growth, population growth. The second one was transportation. This is the third factor. Remember, I said 3 things that will force appreciation. So this is more applicable to your expertise, not general market appreciation, right? And so let's play this video and see if this will also add as a bonus. So if you follow just these 3 rules and buy a property by applying these 3 principles, your client or yourself, whoever is investing, will be in a much safer position, right?
Surrounding areas or neighborhoods will increase in value is because there are 2 reasons. Number one, because a lot of people cannot afford to buy in these boom areas, they will try to buy properties surrounding it, so there will be a demand created. Number 2, this has to do with emotions. People will think that the neighborhoods that were close to them increased in value, so their neighborhoods should do so too. So you will see that people will ask for more. Additionally, this is at the macro level. That means you're finding a city and then that is booming or has already boomed and passed that stage, and then you will buy in the surrounding of that city. At the micro level, let's say you're buying in a neighborhood that are building newer houses. Don't buy those newer houses. Buy properties that are older and surrounding these newer developments. Or you can buy in areas that are going through gentrification or revitalization. That means people are renovating and a sense of pride of ownership is created in that neighborhood. That means those areas are booming and you're buying in the surrounding area. In the long run, there will be a demand. There will be people asking for more money. So the bottom line is that first of all, find regions, find cities that has already boomed, has already peaked in prices, and buy in the surrounding of that area. And then at the micro level, go to a neighborhood that has gone through some kind of redevelopment or transition or gentrification or a totally brand new suburb, and then buy older properties around it. And this is how you make a lot more money than buying in a boom area. Thank you.
Okay. Is that clear?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so basically you don't want to buy where everyone is buying, because when everyone is buying, that means there is a competition.
Demand is there.
Yes, I mean, let me give you examples. Probably you know about these examples. Let's go with Stouffville. When Markham is booming, that means the neighboring city like Stouffville will also boom, no doubt, because eventually people will not be able to afford here. There is not enough housing there. They will say, okay, it's only 10 minutes or 15 minutes. Why should I not go there and buy 50 or 100,000 less for the same house, right? So that's why, I mean, this principle is applicable wherever you buy. When there is a boom town, then the surrounding, it will affect its surrounding. It's like dropping a stone in the ocean, right? It will have an impact on its surrounding. So there are two issues, which is it's the same principle, but applying it to two issues. Number one is the city in general. So example of Markham and Stouffville. But then within a city, let's say Stouffville, try to find places that has peaked. For example, a new subdivision, the prices are much higher, and then try to buy surrounding it. Or if there is a high-rise building, new condominiums, then try to buy surrounding it. So at the macro level is city, at the micro level is a neighborhood. You don't buy in the peak neighborhood. Buying at the peak neighborhood is an example of buying the latest technology. If you buy, I used to be long time ago in computer business, when new Pentium or whatever chip that was before, because you guys are from old times, so you know what is Pentium. So when a new computer was coming in the market, it was like so high price, and within a couple of months it was coming down all the way 500, 600 less. So you're losing 600 within a couple of months. It's better to buy a little bit older. And same thing applies to housing. So at macro level city and at micro level a neighborhood, try not to buy in the boom area. Try to take advantage of the boom area. So are we following these three principles?
Yeah.
So like now Stouffville is coming up. It's booming.
Yeah, so maybe it will be surrounding area that might be better. But of course, I mean, you have to consider all these three factors. So the income and population growth. So you cannot buy in a surrounding neighborhood that does not have income or population growth. Do you know what I'm saying? So there might be some small towns around Stouffville that may not be growing for whatever reason. And then transportation plays a role, and then this idea of taking advantage of boom area. So those three things go together. Yeah. You just have to pay attention. Okay, let me see if I should give you guys a break or should we do this? Okay, do you guys want to go for a break?
Sure.
Sure.
Okay, so it is about 5 minutes.